So you've probably heard the term overseeding before, and you're just not sure what it is. So today we're going to talk about the steps you should take to have a successful overseed to transform your lawn. So when should you start the process of your overseeding lawn? I live in the Midwest, so I like to start mine the first week of September. That gives us a good steady 70 degrees air temp, and our soil temp should be right around that area as well. The first thing that we should talk about are types of seed, because this is going to be the determining factor on how your lawn looks. If you like a short lawn, you should look at something like a Kentucky bluegrass or perennial ryegrass. If you like something a little longer, I would suggest looking at something as a tall fescue. If you're down south and you're in a pretty hot climate, you might want to move away from something like a perennial ryegrass. They tend to struggle a little bit in the severe heat. Something like a tall fescue is going to do a little bit better for you on that. It's going to be a little bit more drought resistant, going to be a little bit more disease resistant, depending on the type that you get. A lot of people like to plant Kentucky bluegrass, but it does take a little bit longer for that seed to germinate. You're looking at anywhere from 20 to 30 days before you're at a mowable situation. If you need something to come in quick, you should look at something like a perennial ryegrass. You could be mowing that in 10 to 14 days, with tall fescue being slightly behind that. The next step in preparing to overseed your lawn would be lowering the height of cut. During the summer, you've probably raised that height as high as your mower will go to help that lawn deal with the stress of the heat. So when we get ready to overseed, we want to start to slowly bring that down. Once a week, you should probably bring that down a notch, and your goal is to get down somewhere around 2.5 inches depending on your lawn type. I like to go just under that to 1.75 inches. Now once we start lowering that cut before our overseed, your lawn is probably going to start looking a little brown, and that's okay because we are going to fix that. This is not a long-term problem. Now once we have our lawn down to the height that we want it, the next thing that we're going to look into is we're going to start looking at dethatching. You might want to look at dethatching if you've had some fungus over the summer, or if you just had some grass die from the heat. It's looking a little brown and you need to thin it out a little bit. This is the time to do that. There are a few ways to do this. You can do this with a dethatching rake that you can get at Home Depot. It's a little bit of work compared to doing it with a machine, but it is a very affordable option. Your second option would be to use a power tool like a Sunjoe. That's what I use on my side, and you can get those from Amazon. Those make it a little bit easier. They're not very big, so it is a little bit time consuming, but quality of the work that they put out is worth the purchase in my opinion. Your next option would be to rent a machine from Home Depot. You can rent these pretty affordably. They are pretty big and they are pretty heavy, so maybe get a friend to help you with it, load it up in your truck, and it is going to be a considerable amount of work to do your entire yard because they are just big and clunky. And your final option for dethatching would be to just hire it out to somebody local. There's a lot of businesses that will do this for you. And the next thing in our overseed process would be core aeration. Core aeration is not essential to doing an overseed, but it is very beneficial in my experience. In the short of what core aeration is it's a machine that puts a tine down in the ground that is hollow, and every time it does that, it takes the last tine and it pushes out and put it on top of your grass. And the benefits of this are to relieve compaction. It can also let air, water, and nutrients directly to the soil of the existing grass, and you will get a very good growth and response from doing a core aeration. So when we do the core aeration, it leaves the holes behind that the plugs came out of, and our seeds that we put down get to fall directly down into that hole with perfect seed to soil contact. They will also anchor to the cores that you put on the top of the lawn, acting as somewhat of a top dress, giving those seeds something to grab a hold of. The same with dethatching. You have some options on how you can do this. I hire mine out to a company that comes out and does it twice a year for me. You can also rent these machines from Home Depot. Now these machines are a lot of work. They are very heavy. Compared to the dethatcher, they're much larger and they will beat you up. But if you want to get it done, you could split it with a neighbor, and it'd be very, very cheap. Okay, so we have our lawn cut lower, we have our lawn dethatched, and we have our core aeration done. The next step is putting down seed. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take our bag of seed and we're going to put it right in the same spreader that we put our fertilizer in. Now on the bag of seed that you pick, there are most likely going to be seed rates. There's going to be one for renovation and there's going to be one for overseed. How many pounds per 1,000 square feet? How many pounds per 1,000 square feet that seed needs to go down to get a nice, even, thick cover. So we're going to measure out how many pounds per 1,000. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put this grass seed right in the spreader and we're going to spread it right on top of our existing lawn. Those seeds are going to fall down into the cores that we pulled out with the core aeration, and they're going to attach there, and they're also going to attach onto the cores that are laying on the top of the lawn. Here's where the value of the dethatching comes in as well. When we removed all the debris from the dead grass or the matted grass that we had in there, we've now opened up areas for seed to fall through the grass directly to the soil instead of getting stuck on the thatch and not germinate. Now, if you don't want to go as far as weighing out every single bucket that you put into your spreader, if you keep it relatively low and we're not just dumping a whole bag of seed on 1,000 square foot, we should be fine. What we don't want are piles of seed in one spot. They will not germinate in this fashion. So what you want to do is just go light. If you don't want to measure it out, go light and take many passes. Go side to side, front to back. Make sure you get a nice, even coverage. So we have our new seed down, and now it's time to feed it. And you might go to a store and you might see all kinds of different starter fertilizer and just be kind of overwhelmed with the options. So there are a lot of options, but one starter fertilizer you might do well with is Scott's with weed control. And what it has is it has the same main ingredient as Tenacity. Tenacity, as a liquid, you can spray directly on new seeds and it won't hurt anything. It can be a pre or a post-emergent control. In a granular form, this starter fertilizer has that same main ingredient. So for my overseeding last year, I learned something that I'm going to share with you, and that is I'm going to wait at least a week to put down my starter fertilizer after I've put seed down. Last year when I put seed down at the same time as I put starter fertilizer down, my existing lawn overgrew the seed that I put down and it shaded it out. So I had to mow much earlier than I wanted to. So I know we don't want a lot of traffic on these new seeds, but it might be a good idea to wait 3 to 5 days to put your starter fertilizer down to get those new seeds a chance to establish and start to germinate before we push a lot of growth on the existing lawn. Okay, so now we're on to the single most important step of this entire process, and that's watering. We want to keep these new seeds moist, but not soaking wet. We don't want them sitting in water, but we also don't want them to dry out. It's a very delicate balancing act that you're going to have to find on your own property because everybody's lawn is different. It's going to depend on how much sun you get, how much wind you get, and how much you can water. But this is very important that we keep those seeds moist. If you have in-ground sprinklers, this isn't going to be such of a problem for you because you can just program your system to run however you want it to do and however you need it to do. If you don't have in-ground irrigation, what you can very easily do is build an above-ground irrigation system. And you can do this relatively cheap with spikes and in-ground sprinkler heads that you just connect the hose to, and you can move them around. But keeping our new seeds moist is the most important thing that we can do to have a successful overseed. Depending on how much sun and how much wind and many other factors, you may need to water 3 to 4 times a day. When I'm watering an overseed project, I water 3 times a day for roughly 7 minutes, and that varies a little bit from zone to zone because there are some trees that I get some shade in that need a little bit less water. So a good strategy for watering your new seed might be something around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, get some water on it before the sun really comes out, and then maybe around 11 to 12 o'clock we hit it again just to keep the sun from really drying these things out. We hit it with some water again, and then maybe 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon we'll hit it a third time. Now again, everybody's going to have a different requirement because if you get more sun in one area and not on the other side that you seeded, you might need a little bit less water. If you get a lot of wind will really pull the water out of the ground. So these are all factors that we have to take in when we're doing an overseed. So we've made it this far and now we need to mow our new grass. And you may be curious how long you should wait until you mow it. Well, the answer isn't that simple because everybody's going to be a little bit different depending on your grass type and depending on how much starter fertilizer you put down and so many more. So, but a good rule of thumb is to wait as long as you possibly can. I try not to mow for 3 weeks after I do an overseed. Some situations that may not just be possible. What you don't want to do is you don't want your grass to get 4, 5, 6 inches tall and start shading out your new seed that's growing. But we also don't want to be out there mowing it all the time. So this is something you're going to have to gauge on your own. But a good rule of thumb is to let it get to at least 3 inches. Your new seed, let your new seed get to 3 inches before you mow it. You want to be as gentle as possible. Get on, mow it, get off. Make sure your blades are nice and sharp. You want to make sure your stripe kit is taken off. We're not striping new grass. We got to be as gentle as we possibly can. I would suggest bagging your clippings while you're doing new grass. We don't want anything sitting on top, maybe blocking some sun from a seed that hasn't germinated. So now that we've got 2 or 3 mows in, we may be 3 or 4 weeks out from when we've planted seed, and this would be a good time to put down a second dose of starter fertilizer just to get that phosphorus back in there and help those root systems grow as much as they can before winter. You may be curious about weeds, but we're not worried about weeds right now. If you have weeds, we're going to spot treat those. We're not going to put down any sprays. We're not going to put down prodiamine. We're going to worry about that in the spring. For now, all we're worried about is building the system of the seed that we just plant in. And that's it. You've successfully overseeded your lawn. With these steps, you can have a successful overseed and completely transform the way your lawn looks. Now, I know some of these may seem difficult and they may seem intimidating, but if you take this step by step, it's not a hard process, and you can be successful at overseeding your lawn. Thanks, guys.